Hey, that wasn't supposed to happen. Hold on just a second.
Are you ready?
Power.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
I'm building an alliance.
God bless the internet.
Okay, let's party. It's showtime.
It's time for the Alliance Guys podcast, with your hosts Kevin Frazier, Jaden, DKM, and J. Cal.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Alliance Guys. My name is J. Cal. That is DKM, and we're here to just, talk some wrestling. Talk some wrestling with you guys. What's up, DK?
Hey, Jay, has anything exciting or big happened in the wrestling world within the
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me.
Hello? Hello?
Uh-oh. Whoa.
Hey, what about that?
You move sides. Can you still not hear me?
Well, I can't hear you at all, sir.
Oh,
there you are. There you are. Now I hear you.
Now you hear me?
Now I hear you.
Oh, good. I was getting worried.
Don't get too worried.
That's like, this is a brand new microphone, and it shows it's on. So, hey, anything exciting happening in the wrestling world in the last 24 hours?
No, nothing I can think of. What about you?
Not that I really know of. I heard somebody might have retired, but I didn't recognize the name.
Was it the old owner of Capital Sports?
Huh. It could have been him. What's his name? Vladimir McMahon. Yeah.
There was that old WWA promoter, Andrew McManus. Is that who you're talking about?
Could be. I mean, it didn't really mean anything to me, but it seemed like, everybody on Twitter and everything was just having like this connection meltdown.
See, okay, obviously, guys, we're being silly. We're talking about the lasting implications now that Vince McMahon is officially out of the WWE. He's still the number one shareholder, so I don't know how he's technically out, but we'll see how that all plays out over here in the next few weeks. And obviously that's who we're talking about. But, I haven't heard a lot of outrage or even shock. I have heard some people sad, which I find kind of ironic, especially with some of the allegations that have come out recently. But I haven't really heard anyone outraged by this. How about you, DK? What have you heard?
Brock Lesnar, that's about it.
Well, him and Vince had a special relationship, and he was probably only there because of Vince,
Oh, that's very true. And it would not surprise me in the least if this doesn't end up being his last appearance. Some people figured he may have retired unofficially back at WrestleMania, but this may actually do it. He may actually be gone after this.
Sorry.
Just how many J's do we need on this show?
Yeah. I was just trying to see what was going on. Chris Drummond says Ike Permuter is the biggest shareholder of Marvel, but they phased him out because he was bad for business. Yes. Forgive me when I say this, Chris. It's not about who is running the company. It's just that Vince does have a vested interest in it. I do believe that this was the right decision for him to step away from the company. There is going to be more allegations coming. That's what at least the writing on the wall is there's more things to be announced. He's 77 years old. His presence in the WWE isn't the same as it was 20 years ago. He doesn't need to be an on-screen talent. And let's be honest, what does a 77-year-old man have, a 77 multi-millionaire man have in common with the everyman that's watching his product?
Well, the argument based on the dwindling ratings has been not much.
Right.
And, I don't know a whole lot about the story with Ike, but I don't know if he was major. I mean, Vince controls like 80% of the voting stock. I mean, if he had wanted to, he could have come in, fired the board of directors, and replaced them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that as a publicly traded company, that's a little, that would basically just equal fire sale on the stock. But under theory, he could have done that.
Wait, what theory's involved?
In some way.
At NWA Gold, our pal Tim, of you guys know from the other Alliance guys, an occasional co-host of this show, says, I'm torn. On one hand, he shaped wrestling more than anyone, and his absence will be felt. On the other hand, so long, you creepy fuck. And I kind of feel the same way. A buddy of mine who only watches WWE, he occasionally will watch AEW. I've taken him to indie shows. It never really stuck with him. He was very much a WWE fan. He's kind of like one of those what do you call them? Vincels, I guess. He very much is in support of Vince McMahon, and he was very shocked to hear him leave. And I told him, I said, why are you shocked? There's more allegations coming. There's more things happening.
Yeah. Here's the thing that we forget. And I was watching actually another podcast in which one of the guys, made it very clear he didn't like Vince. He wasn't going to say, thank you, Vince. Vince could, kiss his pasty white behind, blah, blah, blah. And I chuckled to myself a little bit because it's not that I don't understand the sentiment, but if it hadn't been for Vince McMahon, he wouldn't be on a podcast talking about wrestling.
This is true.
I mean, the fact that you and I are on a small podcast talking about wrestling in any way, shape, or form is a result of decisions Vince McMahon made back in '84 and was able to, carry out a successful WrestleMania, which a lot of people forget was a make or break for him.
Right.
Because he was spending a ton of money. He was bankrupting himself, buying up all these spots for syndication. And if WrestleMania had failed, that would have been the $1 million he had gotten from Crockett, and he would have been in sad shape. And but here's part of the reason we're kind of talking about it today is as goes WWE tends to be as goes wrestling in general.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest, TNA, a lot of their influence was still, what a lot of people call WWE light. AEW, they basically claim they can use WWE stars better than WWE did, but they don't use them in a whole lot different way. I mean, they let someone like Bryan Danielson be Bryan Danielson more than WWE did, but
I mean, did they though? His time he's only been there for like 6 months before he got hurt. We didn't really get to see even Bryan Danielson any different than Daniel Bryan on his way out of the WWE.
Well,
what was different?
His style in the ring was far more technical.
Okay.
Vince doesn't give a crap about technical stuff.
Sure.
Who was it? Shayna Baszler tells a story about her and Natalya going into the ring and working a match in which they just basically had a throwdown. Kind of closer to a real competition than a WWE match. And she said Vince hated it. He made them go back out and retape it.
Yeah.
Because this was pandemic era time. And he made them go back out and retape. And his comment was, it looks like two girls fighting. It was like, okay, Vince.
Hey, real quick, let's go to some of the comments. Surprisingly, on a Saturday afternoon with no advertisement, we've got a few people in the chat. Chris says, my prediction is the Universal buys it, and Khan and Steph will run it independently, just like Marvel and Lucasfilm is with Disney. For those of you who don't know, NBC Universal is the parent company of course, USA, NBC, and a lot of other properties. But that's certainly, I bet that's on the table. I don't have any inside information on that, but it wouldn't shock me if that happened at all. Our pal Rick Del Santo from the Pro Wrestling Zone podcast says, I'm sure more news will be coming soon, the quiet before the storm. And I tend to agree with that too. I feel like there's a lot we haven't heard. If it wasn't a big deal to the board of directors for Vince McMahon to pay off somebody who he basically, when he was finished, passed over to John Laurinaitis, I don't think there's that. There's definitely more that they've kept hidden, and a lot more hidden than what we've seen. Lamb says, like it or not, he turned a local promotion from his father into a global promotion and changed the business. Yes, I think Lamb hits the nail on the head when it comes to what Vince was able to do. Remember back then there was territories. It was all territories. Everything was local, or at the very least regional. And it was Vince who took that national, and that hadn't been done before. So you're right, Lamb. That's a pretty big deal. Our pal Chris Drummond's getting ready to watch Ring of Honor in 20 minutes, and Paladin's here. It's good to see you in a live chat. Haven't seen you in a while, Paladin. And then lastly, Tim, NWA Gold says, Rick is right. It won't be long before the headline changes from Vince retires to WWE Board of Directors forced McMahon out.
Well, they're saying the decision was made about a week ago, which would have been about the time that the second story from Wall Street Journal came out. And understand, the only reason any of this was happening is because Wall Street Journal got a hold of it. And if they had not gotten a hold of it and published a story about the first time, because the review was already underway, Stephanie stepped down and away from the company while the review was happening.
Yeah.
Vince was still chairman and CEO while the review was happening. It was not until the news made it public that they're kind of like, okay, we got to do something. And let's be honest, a lot with him still in charge of creative, with his daughter as the interim chairman and CEO, with his guy still there, everybody knew Vince was still in charge. And even now, Vince is going to be guiding Bruce Pritchard for a bit as Pritchard takes over the creative. And so, like, people who are celebrating and can't wait to see what WWE is becoming, tap the brakes there a little bit. Because, a lot of people think the reason when Triple H went out with his coronary event, had a heart attack. A lot of people think the reason they fired all the TNA things were because that was the group he was planning on moving up with him if he got to take over creative control in WWE whenever Vince went.
Yeah.
And, the people who are still there are, Kevin Dunn, who's probably the worst aspect of WWE as far as what we see on TV. And Pritchard, and both of them are yes men. Pritchard's an incredibly big ass kissing yes man. And so, and also, Stephanie was brought up under the auspices of her father, and the only one who's there that has ever shown an inclination to see things differently is Triple H, and he's in talent relations. He's not in the creative side.
Mm-hmm.
So, he may work with talent to get creative. We don't know what Bruce is like creatively because Bruce has never, really been in charge. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens because, Vince was notorious for tearing up scripts and changing things at the last minute and, them not knowing what was, being 4 weeks out from pay-per-view and not knowing exactly what the card was. And, Vincent Kennedy McMahon was a far cry from his father, Vincent McMahon, who, literally, when he decided to take the belt off Bruno Sammartino, already picked a date and time that Bob Backlund was going to win it. So much so that even though superstar Billy Graham had gotten quite over as a heel as a heel champion, and could have earned them money for another couple of years being on top, Vince Sr., not really a senior, but Vince Sr. Still went ahead with his title change because that's what the plan was.
Yeah.
I can see Braun, Nia Jackson, Road Dogg getting hired back. I can see that too, Chris, but right now I wouldn't be too... Bray Wyatt's the one I see the most as a possible coming back. But I wouldn't get too up. Remember, a lot of these people were released not just because of Vince or whatever, but because basically Nick Khan sent out the thing to get rid of, we're not going to be spending so much. And
those were all money moves. It had nothing to do with creative, had nothing to do with, we don't have something for them. They were thinning the company down to boast profits, right? To get the stocks up. And I do believe that they knew that there was going to be some challenging times ahead. You got to remember, like, this McMahon family, it didn't happen by accident, right? These are all intelligent people who have, wealth and the ways of protecting their wealth and ways of generating wealth and ways of, hey, we want to be wealthier. Look, it's borderline amazing that Vince McMahon took a regional wrestling company and made it into a multi-million dollar publicly traded company on the stock market. That guy knew what he was doing. In terms of business, maybe you don't like his creative direction, and that's fine. And he is creepy, don't get me wrong. But the dude was able to take a wrestling company, him and the people working with him, and made it into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Let's take everything out of consideration.
the man who didn't even really like wrestling.
They beat Ted Turner. Ted Turner was a billionaire, right? By today's standards, Ted Turner was one of the most wealthiest men in the America at the time. And when he bought WCW, like, you know, that was a big deal. And they couldn't compete with it. Or, I mean, they did, but they couldn't withstand McMahon. And they were spending way more money than Vince ever spent in the industry. You look at the contracts that Hall and Nash had and Hogan. And, like, I remember even reading, like, back in the day on the dirt sheets where Chris Benoit was making, like, $500,000 a year. And he was, like, in the mid-card for the WCW. So it's like you think about the money that WCW is spending, and McMahon was still able to withstand their presence, not only withstand them, but at the end of the day, own the intellectual property of WCW, was able to grow his company in such a way that, again, publicly traded on the stock market, paying out dividends. Investors love that because they get paid just for holding that stock. And everything that they've done in the meantime, I mean, it's just incredible. Hey, wrestling aside, the business aspect of what Vince McMahon did for wrestling is incredible.
You know, like I was saying earlier, I mean, the main reason we're talking about this, even though we're technically an NWA, UWN, dog, IHWE type show, is that what WWE does affects what everybody in wrestling does. I mean, Billy's booking style, you can relate to WWE because from his TNA days, which was also very WWE-ish in its booking. Even AEW, their style is more WWE than, I mean, it's not really an alternative WWE. It's just a different flavor of it. And so if WWE starts changing how they book, and again, like I said, let's not get too excited I imagine at some point Kevin Dunn will be forced out, but I couldn't tell you if it's going to be this week or next year. And it was.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and it wouldn't surprise me if Bruce Pritchard decides to retire and move on, since he's not really used to being the guy in charge. And so, and, you know, as the largest shareholder and aid and stuff like that, I don't know how long Vince McMahon's influence, and with Stephanie being, you know, I'm not expecting anything really drastic to happen fast. I think, you know, maybe by WrestleMania we might start going, hey, this product's different. If they get rid of Dunn quick, we might say it a little bit quicker, because since he's the director producer of the show and responsible for all those crappy camera angles and switching, you know, camera angles every 10 seconds.
Oh God, it's worse.
And everything, we might start saying the show has a different feel. But I mean, let's not start thinking everybody who ever left WWE is going to come back.
No.
Let's not start thinking that everybody who had a problem with creative will suddenly, you know, creative will magically be fixed. They're not going to bring back the women's tag team titles. I doubt they'll bring back
Sasha and Naomi.
Yeah, Sasha and Naomi. Or could they come back at some point? Sure. Are they going to come back, you know, at SummerSlam and be the tag team champions again? No. And Jared Borash, I could see getting a bigger role from Chris. Yes, I could see that too.
You know, but to be completely honest with you, I think everybody who's still involved with the company right now, there's going to be a shift in change and responsibility, I think, too, because if Vince was the head of your creative, and now who are we assuming is taking over? Kevin Dunn?
Well, Kevin Dunn's responsible for what we see.
Okay.
He's the producer, director, and stuff like that. So he's the one that sets up the shots. He's the one that's why we're seeing people watching TVs like this. You know, we're going to face the camera and the TV's here, and so we're kind of going to watch it over our shoulder and things like that. He's the one that's responsible for the 50-minute long Roman Reigns entrance. And
So,
everything.
so who do we think? Who do we assume right now is going to be head of creative now that Vince is out of the picture?
It's Bruce Pritchard.
Okay, so I would imagine that
They've named Bruce Pritchard and said that Vince will help during this transition.
So I imagine that Bruce Pritchard will still, is going to be in charge of creative, but I also feel like some of the producers and agents who are currently still working in the WWE will now become more important than they were previously. I could see somebody like Scrap Iron Adam Pearce now having a more active role in the company. Remember, he was the guy that was booking Ring of Honor, booking and producing Ring of Honor. He was also helping to book and produce Championship Wrestling from Hollywood back in its day when he was there. So that wouldn't surprise me either to see Adam Pearce take a more backstage role as well as an on-screen. The on-screen character I don't think is going to change, but I could see him adapting a more of an behind-the-scenes role as well.
That could be Tim. Dude,
Hey guys.
what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, just on this topic right now, you could see somebody take over a greater role, or you could see them out with Vince. Like if Bruce Pritchard is taking over creative, I bet you that's a short-term decision, because like my initial thought is Vince probably didn't have a choice in this matter about leaving the company, right? And if you're going to leave the number one right hand for Vince in charge while Vince is transitioning out, look at in my business, I wouldn't do it. I'd clean house. And while there's value in guys who are separated from the Vince's inner circle, like Adam Pearce, there's also a connection to Vince. If that's the guy who hired him, there could be people thinking, and I know he controls 80% of the stock. I get it. His presence will still be there. He'll still have influence over this company. So maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see Bruce Pritchard, sitting on the creative chair for very long. And I don't know if you'll see what's his name, the producer director. You were just talking about him,
Kevin Dunn.
Adam Pearce, Kevin Dunn.
I don't know if I think he'll be there a lot longer than we think he will be. But again, it's so volatile right now. It could go either way for anybody.
Well, Kevin Dunn is not popular.
Right.
He kind of shared the same popularity as John Laurinaitis, just as far as whether the talent likes him or not. And so I see him probably being the first to go, but I'm not saying it's going to be next week.
Right. You can't change your entire style of production overnight unless you've got a plan in place.
Yeah, I was going to say the most important thing you have to have is somebody ready to take that role. And the truth is,
well, it just depends.
Well, kind of like with talent, they may not have. I don't know that they've ever trained anybody up to take over that role, because Kevin Dunn was going to be there as long as Vince was there. And let's face it, up until last week, even Vince thought he was going to be there until he died.
How would you guys feel if somebody like Eric Bischoff came back into the picture?
I'd cry a lot.
Just stop.
I'm just saying.
No, I know. just immediately, it feels like it did 20 years ago. You know what? It didn't work. Let's hire Russo back. No, come on. There are other options, right?
Well, and
the
then
other thing that kind of surprised me was that Triple H was in talent relations, which I understand, but I'd probably have rather him have gone over creative and somebody else. And let's understand, they split the CEO position. We have co-CEOs.
I don't like that either.
Which is, there's no such thing, by the way.
Yeah. You know what it tells me? Wait, real quick. You know what it tells me when you have two CEOs? That you have no CEOs.
Well,
there's no such thing as having two leaders, right? Like we don't have the presidents of the United States. We don't have the popes in the Catholic Church. We don't have the mayors. We have the CEO. We have the the Pope, we have the president. I think when you try to split up leadership like that, it's a recipe for disaster. They used to say if you platoon in baseball, right? You platoon first baseman and you have one that hits against righties and one that hits against lefties, you don't really have a first baseman.
Yeah. When you see something like, so and so is coming on as a co-CEO to assist the existing CEO, that means that existing CEO is not long for that spot. Like it's not going to be co-CEOs a year from now. There's no chance.
Not likely. Well, see, or what it'll be is it'll be in a different way or something like that.
Well, they can make Stephanie the chairwoman of the WWE, and then Nick Khan could remain as CEO, and that's how you split that. Where the chairman is just basically a title, right? Where the CEO is actually doing the work.
Right. Well, right now, what it is, Stephanie's chairwoman and co-CEO, and Nick Khan is president and co-CEO. And this is me. I haven't heard anything, but this is me. What I think is basically getting ready to happen is Nick Khan's going to manage the business side. Stephanie's going to manage the wrestling side. And then the two of them will have to work out where the two connect. Hey, we need to cut cost. We need to trim the roster. We need to whatever. And I think that's probably where that's going to be the split. But again, probably in a year you'll see one of them. Either Khan won't stick around or Stephanie will give up the position or something. Give up the CEO position.
So let me pose another question to both of you, because prior to the pandemic, and Triple H was leading NXT, it was almost its own separate entity. It was allowed to tour. It had its own time slot on the network, not on Peacock, but on the network. And all these positive things were happening for NXT. And Triple H was out there handing out contracts like candy on the independent scene, where that's how they were bringing in wrestlers. That was what Triple H's vision for NXT was. Now that he's back and he's in charge of talent relations, could we see NXT come back to like maybe 3.0 or 4.0, whatever it is now, and change its model yet again to start bringing in more independent pro wrestlers, and to treat it, instead of a developmental brand, more like a third brand like that Triple H was kind of envisioning? Do we see that happening? Is that a byproduct of all these changes?
I don't know, but I would say no for now.
Okay.
Again, I don't think what we see in a year versus what's happening now. There are two ways you do this. You do a big bang, where basically
Bazinga.
You take this month and kind of wrap up everything, and then next month and during this time you have all new sets built. You have your creative team, writers or producers or agents or whatever, going over things, redoing something. You come back and go, welcome to the new WWE or whatever, which I don't see them doing, because let's be honest, Stephanie's not going to do anything to diminish the legacy of her father. Or you do that, somewhere within the next 30 to 60 days, Kevin Dunn decides to retire. I mean, there's some speculation. Why would Kevin Dunn even want to stay at this point? He's been there doing this forever, and he's a rich man, and he may say, I don't need to do this anymore. Vince is gone. I'm going to go ahead and retire and give him a chance. We'll give him long enough to pick somebody and, get them ready, and then I'm out of here. Or whatever you may want, whatever you may do. So I imagine, Bruce ain't no spring chicken either. And I imagine they're and he has other things he can do. I don't know that he wants to be responsible for two shows and everything. And so I could see him going within 4 to 6 months also. But don't look for them to start saying hospital. Don't look for them to start referring to them as wrestlers. Don't look for them to stop giving stupid names to people when they come in. Don't look for them to go on a spending spree, because that's going to be Nick Khan's domain. And let's face it, Nick Khan's there to make sure that it stays with record revenues. They have record revenues, but their income, their net income, when everything's said and done, has not grown significantly, not grown like the revenues have grown. That's part of the reason they went through all those cuts. So, there's not going to be any spending spree. There's not going to be bringing in talent on the level that AEW brought in talent. And they might start using the talent they have better. The Ricochets, Ollies, or, some of the smaller guys that Vince didn't like. The person this may really affect is Theory. I don't know how well he is or isn't liked by anybody else. I think he has potential, but I think he's been pushed way too fast. And so, he...
real quick, I have to interrupt you just because I've never seen him on a live chat, but my real life best friend in the whole wide world, Chris Chuvan Vantageable, is in the chat. So I just want to say hi to Chris real quick and see if he gets embarrassed because I said his name on the air.
Well, let's see. Boy,
Chris was
pronounce that too. Wow, that's pretty good.
I've known him since the 4th grade. I was best friends with his cousin too. Chris is who I was speaking about earlier, who is a diehard WWE fan. Has followed WWE pretty extensively for the last 30 years, except for the brief time where his mom stopped him from watching wrestling because his cousin put him in a sharpshooter and he somehow cut his forehead open. That's another story altogether. But Chris has always been a big time WWE fan. We would even watch the Monday Night Wars all together, me and my buddies, where Chris would watch. We would all watch Nitro, and then we would all watch Raw. And Chris was always a much bigger WWE fan. He was a Stone Cold fan. He would buy the shirts. He would support the product. Of course, he loved the NWO and all that stuff too. But as soon as the WWE emerged as the victor in that, he didn't start watching Impact. I think he might watch AEW on occasion, but not often. And like I said, we even dragged his ass to the Indies, and it didn't take to him. He was a WWE guy. So this, with Vince stepping down, that's going to affect all the Chris's in the world, the people who watch the show, who love the show, Boston Crab, who like the show, who've always been a fan of wrestling. How is it going to change? That's something we'll have to remain to be seen.
We're probably going to lose everybody here in a minute as ROH's pre-show is kicking off.
This broke what, Friday afternoon?
Yeah. Just before SmackDown.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see the stock prices come Monday after in WWE.
I think even with all the distractions that you're hearing from Vince, one thing I know that as a stockholder myself, any changes in news and leadership is always a scary thing because they've had such success for such a long time. And even before they were cutting roster members and trimming down that payroll, trimming down the fat, the stock was always always going up based on the fact that they paid a high dividend and that they were always finding new money ventures. So like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia money, the new deal with USA, the new deal with Fox. I mean, remember when Fox got when WWE got that deal with Fox, they basically USA said, "Hey, we're going to keep spending what we're spending for Raw, and we don't want SmackDown. Go find SmackDown a new home." And so the money that they were making for both SmackDown and Raw, they just made for Raw, and then SmackDown was able to go find a new home on Fox, which is a huge other venture for them. And that's why so much money kept coming significantly. And Chris is very business savvy as well. He points out that he thinks that the stock is going to drop on Monday. I would be shocked if it doesn't drop. But it also might be the best time if investors out there to buy too.
It might drop, but I don't think it's going to be significant. It's been over $60 for the last month. And so that's where you know, it didn't even really drop when the second announcement for Vince came through. So
Yeah.
I think I think some of that's already been built in, that people are expecting Vince to be gone.
So Chris brings up the deal that the Hulu deal is up in November. Now that's an interesting point, because I didn't know. First of all, I didn't even know they still had a deal with Hulu. That's surprising to me. But secondly, think of it this way: they are a commodity, and in a streaming market where everybody wants to have something unique, special, you know, Hulu is now owned by Disney. I mean, for the majority of it, it's still like a conglomerate, but predominantly owned by Disney. And I could see where you know, they might be taking their talents to another streaming service. What, you know, Paramount, Netflix, Apple. What do the Apple call theirs? I guess it's just Apple. HBO Max. I mean, any one of these could potentially be a suitor for that deal. You know, I mean, obviously it's on Peacock, but obviously they also have the broadcasting rights on Hulu. If they can take that somewhere else, and again, if Netflix might be that spot, imagine that'd be a lot more eyeballs on the product than Hulu.
I don't know with Netflix anymore. They're bleeding subscriptions so bad.
Yeah, I heard they might get bought out by Microsoft.
I could see something like that right now, because they're in a bad place right now. And this is why I said one time, when all these different streaming things started popping up, I go, you can't afford everything. And I think someone went through and did the math. They go, by the time you get Discover and HBO Max and Disney, and, you know, even the Disney package that includes Hulu and ESPN and stuff like that, that, you know, you're spending almost $200 a month in streaming services. It's like, I don't think so. And that doesn't even count the specialty ones. You know, if you want to do your amateur wrestling or some of the conferences out there, stream their football things, and you can. So if you want to see every game in the Big Ten, you know, you can sign up for $200 or something like that to stream all the Big Ten football games. So
I wanted to ask you, DK, because you usually have these numbers, like, at least, you know, you're in the ballpark of being right on the money anyway, for viewership. Do you know what the viewership for NXT 2.0 is or was at its best versus the viewership of NXT, the original version?
Well, we don't really know NXT. Are you talking about 2.0?
Yeah, did I not say that? Yeah, the 2.0 versus Triple H's NXT.
Yeah.
It's got to be way worse, right?
Oh, it's about half.
Yeah.
And it started going down when they separated from AEW. They were running about 800,000, and then they went down a little bit, so they were somewhere between the 6 and the 7s. And I know at one point they were under 400,000. I don't know what they are right now. So,
can I just say again that it makes me so happy my friend Chris is here? I'm sorry, just he popped me today, that's for sure.
You can say it as much as you want. We're
Love
just
you,
not going
Chris.
to listen. All right. Oh, here it is. Here's the ratings. So, ratings have been under 6,000 for the most part. In June, when they had that big, card, they almost made it to 700,000. And let's see. So they dropped from their highs of around 850,000 down to around 400,000. They kind of hit around 500,000, and then have gone back up to the 6 and 7.
Okay.
So they have had a small rebound.
Well,
And
I mean-
this actually goes to something. I'm sorry to cut you off, but if I don't say this, then I won't remember. But
Yeah.
This actually goes to something that I was thinking earlier, and especially when you're talking about your one friend and everything, Jay.
I have more than one friend.
Your one friend, Jay. When it comes to crowds chanting "Thank you, Vince" or whatever, let's remember. WWE fans aren't wrestling fans. All right, let's not confuse them. They're WWE fans, and most of them aren't watching podcast, and most of them aren't reading the Wall Street Journal. So the only thing they really know about the scandal is something they may have picked up on,
Twitter.
The 30-second blast from ESPN or whatever sports thing they watch. Most of them aren't really going to. And, for a lot of us, we were watching and keeping up with and doing everything with Vince's retirement announcement. And when Stephanie goes out and announces it on the show, I'm watching the audience. I'm not watching Stephanie. And there are a lot of people going, "What? Whoa," and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised any of them are out there chanting "Thank you, Vince." This is all they know. And they're not like I said, they're not a wrestling fan. They don't know what the NWA is. And if you showed them the NWA, they probably wouldn't like it.
No. Chris, do you like the NWA? Chris, do you watch Impact? Chris, do you watch AEW? He's exactly who you're talking about. Now, Chris, don't get me wrong. Chris isn't like a typical Mark. He's a very intelligent person. He's college educated, very, very fine person. Chris, but also only watches WWE. And if you put the NWA on, he'd be like, "Oh, I think I recognize that as Chris Masters." And, "Oh, hey, that's the Funkadorus or whatever, the Funkadactyl, whatever they used to call Tyrus."
Bro,
Or, "Hey, I remember Trevor Murdoch when he used to team with Lance Cade." But he's not going to know, like, who those guys really are. And Nick Aldis, and he would probably call Tom Latimer the guy that beat up, Charlotte, which that's not what happened either. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on, with the Netflix price is way too high. Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I have not dumped it yet, but I am like extremely close.
The only reason why I keep Netflix at this point is I really like the Ozarks, and my wife likes the show You. And Ozark season just ended. The series just ended. So I'm like, okay, let's go. We can drop this now. We literally, my house, right? We get Prime because it's my wife signed up for the, free 2-day shipping. So you get Prime regardless with that. And then you get, I paid for Disney Plus. I got it on special where I think I pay like $2 a month until like next year when it goes to regular price. Then we pay for Hulu, but we pay a reduced cost on that one because a Black Friday deal. Then Michelle pays for Paramount. I pay for Peacock. And it's like we literally have everything now. The only thing I don't have, which is the one I want, which is HBO Max. Go figure.
Well, see, I get HBO Max for free.
How do you get that for free?
I'm an AT&T customer.
Oh.
So my internet, my cell phones, my home phone, whatever, it's all AT&T. So they give me HBO Max for free. Now, I don't know how much longer it's going to last now that AT&T has spun it off and they merged with Discovery.
I have stock in AT&T, and I was very happy with that one.
Did you end up with stock in the new company?
Yes, I do. I've got holdings on both companies now. And not that this is a finance show, but the AT&T stock took a huge dip. But why that was such a lucrative stock for stockholders is it paid a huge dividend. And so it used to pay I think a 7% dividend quarterly. And so then they got rid of that dividend as soon as they split the companies, but they're still paying out dividends on that stock. So it's still a good one to have.
And that's one of those things that will rebound over time. And plus, if you got the new stocks, you got to add everything together and figure out where you are. But
if you're investing in the United States stock market in any capacity, you're losing money. If I were to sell everything right now, I'd be losing thousands of dollars. But of course, you only lose when you sell. So these downtimes are, it's blood's in the water. If you're an investor, now's a good time to start investing. If you are investing or already invested, you just hold on to what you got because you're going to be losing money right now.
Well, I get HBO Max for free. I get Peacock for whatever the $5 thing is, so I can see WWE, and I watch nothing else on Peacock.
I watch The Office. In fact, that's what I only watch on That's all I watch on Peacock. I don't even watch WWE anymore.
I have Hulu, ESPN, and Disney because they came as a package.
Yeah.
So they're like $5 each. And I watch ESPN sometimes on the boxing and the UFC. And I watch Disney for some of the Star Wars stuff. And I don't watch Hulu at all, but my son watches Hulu because there's some anime show that apparently has run forever and ever and ever. And he started it at the beginning. And last I heard, he was around halfway through. And it's like, okay, at this rate, he's going to, and I think it's still being made too. So it's like at this rate, he's not even going to catch up for another, 6-7 months.
Hey, Tim, what streaming services do you use?
Oh God. We use Amazon Prime. We still have Netflix. I don't really know why. Disney, just surprisingly good.
Yeah.
And whatever else is on the TV. We very rarely watch TV. I downloaded the Fight app so I could watch NWA, but otherwise it's essentially just Prime or Netflix.
Yeah.
I also have Prime because I wanted the 2-day shipping. I didn't get it for the videos, but since I get videos, then I'm not going to argue with it.
Hey, we found somebody else to jump on.
Jaden.
Yeah, that's me. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
I'm using the old phone because for some reason SteamYard does not. My new phone don't get along.
All right. So, Jaden, what are your thoughts on Vince retiring, and how is this going to affect wrestling in the years to come, since everybody kind of copies what WWE does?
Well, good. A whole bunch of people that are in charge of wrestling promotions need to retire, so that's a good thing. We get Billy to retire. We get Tony to retire.
Wait. Hot take. See, I need a banner that says "Hot Takes" by Jaden that pops up on the screen right here.
Well, create it.
Next time. Let's go. Hot takes, Jaden. Let's hear them.
But I don't think Vince is really retired anyway. I think he's just running the company through Bruce and Kevin Dunn and I guess Stephanie. And also, it's wrestling. Nobody really retires anyway unless you're dead. Even then, I'm not 100% sure.
There's some truth to that, isn't there, folks?
Well, I mean, Terry Funk hasn't been in the ring in a couple of years, so.
Yeah, give it time. He's probably going to be Flair's next opponent for his next retirement.
God. Forever. Jaden.
Yes.
You don't think that Vince is actually retired?
No. I think it's as long as Bruce and Kevin Dunn are there, Vince is there. It's just I don't know, a facade, a go around. I think he's still there. It's just now he's got other people to do it for him. I
mean, you could be right. What do I know? But I don't know what the WWE's worth, but it's in certain number of billions, right? So how would you pull that off in a publicly traded company? Like, I would assume not if, but when we find out the board of directors gave Vince the boot, that there's got to be some kind of, whether or not he owns 80% of the executive stock or whatever it's called.
Real quick, I just want to point this out because you asked. The WWE, as of 2020, had a net worth listed as $5.71 billion. And that even says, despite viewership hiccups, WWE has been doing mighty fine in the revenue department.
Yeah. So it's got to be hard, right, to cover up something in a publicly traded company worth $5 billion.
I don't know how much Spike TV was worth, but they Impact TNA, whatever, hid the fact that Vince Russo was booking the company for, what was that, like 2.5 years?
Oh, God. It was that long?
It was a while. And then all you have to do is, Bruce, this is what I want you to do, or you're fired.
Sorry.
That's not bad.
You want to do it, you have to do. You have no chance in hell.
You've got.
So that's all.
I will say that
this is what I want you to do.
I will say that he won't be there to make on-the-fly changes, but I have no doubt that if he watches the episodes, that he won't be calling. That's why a lot of people are saying, until Kevin Dunn's gone, until Bruce are gone, don't expect anything to really be different.
I bet you he called Brock Lesnar up and like, Brock, I'm still in charge. Stay around. I need the money.
Well, I've heard rumors. It hasn't been on any of the big news things, so I don't know that it's true or not, or what. But I heard rumors that he was the one that talked Brock into that. Basically, he said, Brock, called him and said, Brock, don't worry about it. Just, come back and go through SummerSlam. And they say by the end of the night, everything was blown over. Brock was fine and everything. And so
yeah. I think
he had to interfere in that. That's my personal belief.
I wonder if he didn't come back, if the WWE would have the two announcers talk smack about him and say that how he's disappointing the fans and he's not doing the Tyronic tradition and stuff. And if that's true, I'd love to see Brock say something to Michael Cole's face.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about an hour about kind of like what's going on with the WWE and what's going on with the stock. And thankfully, our pal Chris Drummond, Big Chris Dog from the old message boards, been updating us on what's happening in Ring of Honor. You guys want to keep talking some wrestling, or you want to call it a night?
Well, I want to bring up one thing, and especially now that Jaden's here. Okay, so let's say over the next year, WWE starts to change. Kevin goes, Bruce goes, Triple H ends up kind of in a bigger position, and we're creative, and whether officially or unofficially, he's the one that ends up kind of in charge and doing. So we start seeing WWE become, let's say, a little more of a wrestling company, a little more of NXT 1.9 before they switched. So how does that influence wrestling in general? I mean, do you think that would become more prevalent on the indie scenes, that style of wrestling? And by indie, I don't necessarily mean groups that already have their niche, like Game Changer or, But would that affect somebody like MLW? Would that affect somebody like the NWA? Would it even affect AEW? If suddenly, let's say, over the course of a year, they start becoming more wrestling based as opposed to promo character based?
That would be nice, but the problem is Triple H's NXT was a bunch of shitty guys sometimes, even in my opinion, way too small to be getting pushes that they were. The problem is, and this is going to be very unpopular on the message board, people don't really pay to see small guys wrestle.
No, I agree.
The UFC can get away with it because of the personalities, And because usually the people with the personalities also can deliver inside that octagon. But the problem is, I don't want to see the Johnny Garganos and stuff like that being pushed all the way on there. I don't want the NXT version of WWE. I want the guys who are talented in the WWE, the guys with size and some ability and stuff like that, actually wrestling and showing off what they can do and getting a little more freedom instead of scripted this and scripted that. I would like to see. I don't think we'll ever get a true pro wrestling company ever again, but I think a hybrid would be something that would be worth seeing. And nowadays with modern wrestling, it's the best we're probably going to get. It's unless you want to go to a Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators event, you're not finding pro wrestling anywhere else. So you don't see the NWA, MLW is now doing that stupid Lucha Underground bullshit stuff. And Impact, they're doing a bunch of stupid stuff too. So the only place you're going to see wrestling is, or at least some kind of modified version would be nice. The WWE would do it.
But so let's say they took somebody like Madcap Moss, returned him to Radical Moss. They take somebody like Rick Boogs and give him a decent name and, start using him as a big power wrestler. Bring up people like Rick Steiner's son, who hopefully they give a better name to.
Yeah, call him Rex Steiner. That's perfect. Why the did they change that name? I'm trying to.
They didn't want to use Steiner, and he used Braun for his first name, and then I can't remember where he came up with Breaker. He came up with the name, but only because they wanted to change it.
So he came up with the name. So what was he drinking that night?
I don't know.
Was getting his promos from Scott Steiner? It was just random words coming out of his mouth.
Probably. But anyway, my point is, if you take some of these bigger guys, they've got, somebody they got in the background, of course, is Gable Steveson and everything. So if they start taking some of these bigger guys that can actually, wrestle in the ring, work in the ring, and stuff like that, do you think that's a trend that would develop more across wrestling in general?
Well, I'm going to say it like this. Despite many shortcomings in AEW booking, a lot of the wrestling fans are really giving up on the Jacksons and that stupid, flippy, stupid style that they were doing. In fact, they're turning against that style. You're starting to see somewhat more wrestling. I mean, you still get the stupid stuff that Jon Moxley does, and you still get some of the flippy garbage too, but you're starting to see more of it now in AEW because that's what the fans want. It'd be nice to see in the WWE. And you know what? Already AEW is anyways WWE light, so maybe if they do start doing more wrestling, you will see a WWE light version of that.
And that's kind of what I'll be. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that, why I originally kind of wanted to have this podcast is, this is over the next 5 years going to affect the direction of wrestling one way or another. Because, I mean, in 5 years, wrestling will definitely not be the same. Wouldn't be the same no matter what. So the question is, which direction it's going to head? And I think, we're not going to see the weird Vince McMahon need. I don't know where we'll go to, and I'm not saying we'll go to, athletic worked MMA style wrestling or anything like that. But it's interesting to see what may happen and then the influences that has.
I have an idea, and I don't think anybody's else has thought of this one before. I'd really like to see a sports-based wrestling organization. I don't think anybody's come up with that looking at the way wrestling is now. I mean, you don't see that. Like the AEW didn't come up with they don't want to use sports-based wrestling, right? That's not something they came up with. It'd be such an interesting concept to come up with, though, to actually see an athletic sports-based wrestling promotion. Does anybody remember when HBO used to be the king of boxing, and they would have their little big things where they'd have behind the scenes, and they'd talk to the fighters, and they have a really good build-up package to make you extremely excited for any fight, and especially their big fights. And they had used it so well. It was like HBO 24/7 or something like that.
Yeah.
I would love for any wrestling promotion to start doing that.
You remember when the NWA did something like that called the 10 Pounds of Gold? And
Yeah, they didn't very much attempt it. It was very good. You know what? I never thought we'd miss Lagana, but I miss Lagana.
That 10 pounds of gold, let's be honest, the 10 pounds of gold was, to me, a far superior product than anything else we've had from the NWA since.
Well, let's be honest. People wouldn't care about the NWA of Billy Corgan that much if that series hadn't started. If he had just been showing up in different wrestling things and whatever, and championship wrestling for Hollywood or wherever the title change took place, that
CZW,
whatever. I mean, 10 pounds of gold. I mean, the best 10 pounds of gold buildup they did was Cody versus Nick Aldis.
Mm-hmm.
Man, are they available anywhere? I don't know if the old ones are still available or not.
No, they there was a handful of them that they left on Facebook. I think they just forgot they were there, to be quite honest, because there was an episode of Circled Squared also available on Facebook, the video. But the 10 Pounds of Gold series, you could have bought them on DVD. They had like 2 series of them. But I don't think you can actually watch it outside of the DVD at this point.
We're talking about how it might look, or how we hope it might look over the next 2 to 5 years. But honestly, I think what you'll see in wrestling overall in Vince McMahon's absence, that it'll still be driven by WWE. $5.2 billion. So whoever's running that show is director, the board of directors or whoever is going to go do that to whoever's in charge. Whatever made $5.2 billion, we like that. And $5.2 million means, like DK was saying, most of the people are watching that stuff, right? So I think there'll be, at least for a couple of years, a facsimile of what WWE produces right now. I agree. It would be amazing to have a sports-based product. Maybe ROH could be used for something like that.
By comparison, we said that the WWE is worth $5.7 billion, something like that. I just looked up, and this is based on Microsoft Bing, right? The valuation of AEW is $9.81 million. So that's not even like, that's like 1%, right? Like, that's not even close to being what the WWE is worth.
The valuation was what? Sorry?
9.81 million.
With an M. Million.
With an M. Million.
Yeah.
Compared to $5 billion?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not even a percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's often presented this way, that this is a 2-horse race. It's not.
Yeah, one of the horses is dead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and they did this all the way back with TNA. TNA was often presented as there's WWE, and then way back is TNA, and they're ahead of everybody else and everything like that. And it's just, yeah, I mean.
Well, let me just take a step back now and say maybe these numbers are not accurate at all, because I just, for the heck of it, I put, what is the value of the National Wrestling Alliance? And it's at $34.6 million. So I'm going to go ahead and back off on that and say maybe these numbers are not accurate at all.
Yeah, that's in Canadian dollars. So, like 35,000 US.
What Billy Corgan paid, what, like $100,000 for it?
Pesos, right?
What did you say, DK?
190.
Our pal Billy Wood, not to be confused with Tim Wood, offered what, $60,000 to Bruce.
Wait, the 190? I can afford that. Really? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and like the 90, apparently it was originally somewhere around 100 million. Or not 100 million, 100,000 from what I heard here. And then, but Billy didn't want the library. But Bruce wanted his money back for the library. So it was basically, it's an all or nothing, and you have to take the library. And I spent, $90,000 on the library, so give me that.
We could have pooled our money and bought it.
I could have bought it outright right now.
Yeah, me too. A couple times over.
I'm broke. I can't buy a ticket. So,
Well, that's why we're doing the podcast, to raise those revenue streams up for us.
Exactly.
That's what we're going to do. What you guys don't
21
realize
cents.
is that the money that this channel earns, we're going to present each year an offer to Billy Corgan to buy the NWA every year. Okay, the net value of this podcast. All right, Billy, it'll be all yours. Just hand over
Maybe
the
we can
letters.
swap.
What?
Maybe we can swap. Go, Billy, you take the podcast.
It's a straight up trade.
I'll throw in all the T-shirts I have too.
Work for me.
Speaking of which, new T-shirt designs are coming soon.
Yay!
I don't even know what to say.
Hey, Tim. So, you're the new booker for WWE. What direction would you want to take it?
Congratulations, Tim.
You're
going to get lots of people writing you for bookings right now. Since people in that rumor comes around, you're going to get a lot of people in your email.
The direction that I would like to take it is not the direction that it would be going in.
That's what we're asking. What you would do, not what you. Tell us what you would do and what you think will happen.
I mean, I work for a living. I have budgets to control. I do what makes money. You know, no one's going to come on board and try to revolutionize a product that's tentatively worth $5.7 billion. You're going to do that. So I think you'd want to keep, as a business mind, you'd want to keep the people who helped make it that, and try to make some small positive changes. Like you mentioned, you know, little things that people hate, like why is his name Braun Breaker? Like stuff like that across the board, to try to increase that revenue. But I'm not going to change the formula that help the company make that kind of money. What I'd want to do is turn it into, you know, exactly what Jaden was saying, a sports-based presentation. Something like, you know, what you were just saying about King of Boxing. So, but yeah, the reality is that's not what got them to where they are, and that's not what they're going to do.
You keep saying this $5.something billion, though. That's mostly off of their television contracts.
Yes, it is.
Do you think they're going to get anywhere near that when that comes time for renewal?
I couldn't say.
Before you jumped on, Jaden, I guess Chris brought up the fact that they get about $500 million with their deal with Hulu, which is set to expire in November. Now, theoretically, a company, there are several streaming options that they could shop that package to, or I mean, it's something that could just end up on Hulu. Excuse me, not Hulu. End up on Peacock, and just be part of the network where, you know, maybe Universal pays a little bit more money for that. But if not, I mean, the option to shop that out, there is value there. I mean, you have to understand. I know that we collectively aren't fans of the WWE, but there are a lot of people out there who are, both nationally and internationally, and a deal to have that on a streaming service, especially one that caters to an international audience, could be very beneficial to whomever, you know, whatever role this happens to be for the WWE going forward. So, I mean, if they got $500 million the last time, what could they potentially get this time?
I'm looking right now what's on Hulu. You know what I find?
What's that?
Old episodes of SmackDown. I find the syndicated show, main event, and I find NXT. Is that worth $500 million to the cock?
He meant Peacock, folks.
Well, anyway, honestly, for me, no, but I don't know for them because they're all crazy anyway. But looking at this, I think one of the things you also have to consider is, in Tim's line, changes they make, I think they will make on the idea of increasing ratings. Because ultimately, when the TV deals come, look, if they draw 2 million people for Fox, Fox is going to be happy. Because that's basically what they promised them, was just over 2 million. Now, do they always make it? No. But
can I say something?
What?
So I kind of differ.
You can't.
I differ from both Tim and Jaden. I think that it's they should keep going the route that they're going with like the reality television shows for the Miz and Maurice and the the Diva show that they used to have. I think the fact that they're finding more celebrity to become involved with the product, like the fellas from Jackass and bringing in Jake Paul or Logan Paul, excuse me, and bringing in Bad Bunny and things like that. I think that's where, if I was in control of the WWE, that's the direction I would be heading, because I would be trying to get as many damn eyeballs on the product as possible. And there are people who love trash TV. There are people who love celebrity. And you look, we mentioned this on the Alliance Guys podcast a couple of weeks ago. The WWE has 84 million subscribers on YouTube. 84 million. Okay. Logan Paul has 25 million subscribers on YouTube. Now, you might be saying, well, hey, that's a lot less. Well, sure. Show me anybody in the WWE has 25 million subscribers to their content. And if Logan Paul can bring that audience of 25 million to the WWE to watch Raw, to watch SmackDown, to order pay-per-views, hell, let's say he brings 5 million people to do that. Is that not a win for the WWE? Is that not way more money for the WWE if they have 5 million out of 25 million subscribers come to follow that product based just on that? As a strictly business, and that's all I'm looking at. I'm not looking at the value of the entertainment. But if you bring in Bad Bunny and he brings his millions of audience, the people who watch him worldwide, onto your show, and he is a regular, and maybe not every week, maybe not every pay-per-view, but WrestleMania season he shows up, and Royal Rumble season he shows up. Wouldn't you do that? Because you're generating the money for it.
Do you have any concrete evidence? Go ahead, DK. I'm sorry.
Okay. I would say different ones. Every time you use somebody, there's going to be a diminishing return.
Sure.
So, yeah, in general. Here's the weird thing. Bad Bunny, Logan Paul, even Pat McAfee as the announcer and stuff like that, they almost take this more seriously than the wrestlers do. And, just little things like Pat McAfee getting beat up at the pay-per-view, and it was off, and then they show up at the UFC event, and he's wearing the neck brace. Most wrestlers wouldn't have done that.
I want to point out something too. When you say that they take it more serious, I don't have a ton of inside information in the WWE, but I do know for a fact that the person responsible for helping coach Bad Bunny and the person who shared in the responsibilities of getting Logan Paul ready were both amazed and quite happy with the athletic prowess that both of those guys had, and the fact that they were able to understand as quickly as they did, considering that neither one of them had a background in pro wrestling or sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. If someone is motivated, you can teach them. These guys, they're already commodities, and if they're out there and they want to be a part of it, I'm a big Angels fan, right? You guys all know that. I love it. I live and die with my Angels. If tomorrow Mike Trout said he wanted to be a wrestler on Raw, I'm going to tune in to see what Mike Trout is going to do in a WWE ring. Now, that dude isn't some small, wimpy little guy. He's a pro athlete. He's like 6'2", and he's like a good 200, 220, built guy. If he showed up, I would check it out just to see what he could do. And I think that's where the benefit of bringing in the celebrity is that they can pop a card, they can pop an audience by doing that. And obviously that's why they do it. Look, AEW tried to do it with Shaq. They brought Shaq in and had a match with Cody because they knew that would help draw a rating. Not because Shaq was a great worker or is dedicated to the sport of pro wrestling, but they knew if they put Shaq in that ring that people were going to tune in to check it out. And they did.
Yeah, but did they stay after watching that? That's what you got to be careful.
No, but
But I'm not talking about just that. I'm talking about, did it turn some people off? And that's kind of what sometimes you have to. You always have to balance your, will this enlighten enough people or more people than will it turn off? And look, I don't have a problem with using the celebrities to get the pop, especially ones that are going to take it seriously. But getting back to what Tim was saying, though, the one disagreement I'm going to have with him is, no matter what, WWE ratings are going down and going down and going down, and Raw's at some of its lowest ratings in its point. Its lowest ratings have been within the last year or so, and although you can blame the pandemic for part of it, really the ratings haven't improved much since the pandemic ended, and they've been going back to crowds. And so at some point, someone's going to say, we used to have 5 million people. Now we have 2 million at best. And no, it's not just because they're streaming services, or no, it's not just because they watch on YouTube or whatever. I don't fully trust YouTube numbers, no matter what YouTube says. And everything. At some point, you kind of got to start working. They'll never get back to 5 million people. I'll agree with that. But at some point, you think they could get back to 2.5 to 3.
Yeah, there has to be some long-range forecasting beyond what is working right now. I agree. But in changes like that, you're kind of throwing a dart in the dark at the dartboard about what it is that you're going to change, right? And nobody wants to mess with that particular money. Like, let me ask you guys, would you end the brand split?
Yes.
Oh, immediately.
That's the first thing I would do.
I would come in and well, hold on, let me phrase it like this. I would end an official brand split. I would come in, I'd unify all the titles, which, the only title needs to be unified now is the women's. I don't mind keeping
US and TV separate.
Well, US and
Intercontinental.
Sorry, DK, go ahead.
But what I would do is I would probably have stories and people that run on Fox, and stories and people that run on Raw. Like maybe in the lead up to this pay-per-view, our undisputed champion let's just say Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley. So they're going to feature more on Raw. That's kind of where that thing's going to be done, where our tag team champions are going to be over here on SmackDown with this. Now, that doesn't mean that they can never cross over, nor does it mean that at the end of it that Bobby Lashley may not end up doing something on SmackDown. But I think probably every 3 months you would evaluate and go, okay, let's shift the dynamic here. Because, and I don't care what some people think, I don't think this really bothers the networks as much as people claim, because ultimately the networks just want good ratings.
Yeah.
And if ratings go up, they don't really care. If I can say I got this angle that's kind of exclusive to me for now, because Raw, Universal wants Brock Lesnar, and Fox wants Brock Lesnar, and they both want Ronda Rousey. So if I can move them back and forth between the brands, where for 3 or 4 months they're here and 3 or 4 months they're there, and I know Brock's a bad example right now, but I couldn't think of anybody else that's just real up there, Roman Reigns or whatever, then I think, I have a selling point, and I have a selling point to each show, and each show's not a repeat of the other one, But, no, I don't want SmackDown tag team champions or Raw tag team champions, and, and then I'm doing pay-per-views, and it's the women's title, and which women's title is it, and who's the actual women's champion? There is no women's champion now, because is it Bianca Belair, or is it Liv Morgan, or is it still Ronda Rousey because she's the most over one? When Charlotte returns, is it Charlotte because people hate her, but she she can draw money, or Becky, or maybe Bayley finally returns. So yeah, I mean, there are 2 or 3. I would certainly change the look of the shows. I mean, I'm sorry if you say, Devin, you're in charge tomorrow. What are you going to do? First thing I'm going to do is find a director producer that doesn't change camera angles every 30 seconds and has, or every 5 seconds, more accurately.
Or like when they're punching and the camera zooms in while they're punching. I hate that so much.
And all that crap, and go, hey, find me somebody that knows how to present a sports-based direction. Where we're watching the thing. Maybe somebody who's worked with MMA or something. And then, there was a long time that Dana White was the best wrestling promoter out there. I used to watch the things for some of their upcoming pay-per-views, and I would be like, oh, man, I just can't afford to spend $70 every month on, an MMA pay-per-view. But there were times where matches I wouldn't know about, didn't know who the guys were that, especially when I started. I didn't know who the guys were that were going to be in the ring fighting each other. And he'd make me want to just go, oh, I got to see that. I got to see that. And,
Jaden, would you split the brands?
Let it know. I would
Or the
unify it.
brands?
I would be very disciplined, though. Everybody would be on television. I would have people rotate through. I wouldn't have people showing up for 6 months and then not seen again for 11 months, or even 3. Show up for 3 on one show and never be seen again. I'd be very disciplined and have everybody rotate through, but have constantly stars. And if you're not on the program you're mentioned, if you're a big star and Roman Reigns isn't on Raw but he's going to be on SmackDown, well, sure as hell is going to have something going on with Roman Reigns to mention to keep him in focus. The idea is, and again, I would have brand new championship belts, not those ugly ass things they have now. I'd have championship belts that look like they're prestigious and important, like actually something you want to win. And I would have very few championships. I wouldn't have the U.S. and the Intercontinental. I wouldn't have the women's tag team. I would have heavyweight, secondary, tag team, women's, and that's all I would have. And everybody will be trying to everybody who's in a heavyweight division is going to want to be a heavyweight champion. And if you can't be the heavyweight champion, you're going to be the secondary championship, because that's a stepping stone to the heavyweight championship, just like the NWA used to be, where everybody was going after Ric Flair, and whether they were friends or foes, as long as you weren't Horseman, you were going after Flair. You wanted to be world champion. I would have the discipline to have people. The 50-50 booking would go. There would be people on the hierarchy on the card, and we'd have people that are opening match, and they're good to be opening match, and that's what they're good to be doing, because you can't, if everybody's a main eventer, then nobody's a main eventer. And the other thing is why I would make sure there's only one championship. I can't remember who to credit. I want to think it was Dutch Mantel, but I'm not 100% sure. But somebody said if you have 2 world champions, you have no world champion. The only world champion, there should be one world heavyweight championship in the WWE, and being the biggest brand, it should be the world heavyweight championship. You should do everything you can to make that the most prestigious. Build up every single challenger. You need 8 to 10 top challengers where any one of those 8 to 10 can take that championship. Same thing for the Intercontinental, completely separate. Same thing for the tag team, same thing for the women's. There should be the 8 to 10 challengers that at any single time, any one of them can be put into any match on house show and it will sell out, and people would pay to see it, and it will. They have the threat of winning that championship, and that's the way wrestling should be.
We'd split it, and I got to go in a couple minutes, but we got to. I would split it too, but we are 4 wrestling fans, and the WWE fan is a WWE fan. Right back to DKM was saying before, right? That maybe that's not wrestling per se. And as such, there's 5.7 billion reasons not to split the brand, right? Like it's working this amount. Tim, if I'm the booker, don't mess with the money.
You're not a gambler, are you, Tim?
I'm not, but if I have 5.7 in my pocket, 5.7 billion, I don't need to gamble, Jaden. I'll just stay home and roll around in my bed of money. There's an old joke from a comedian where he's asked, if you were in charge of it might be George Carlin, if you were in charge of the Catholic Church, what would you change? He said the hat. But you can to extrapolate that joke about the Pope. It's why would you change anything in Vince's absence? I suspect it's just going to run as it's been run.
Well, here's the one flaw in your thinking, is that it can't be better. And I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's dangerous when you go, well, we're the top, but they're not as good as they used to be.
Right.
And there are more critics than there are, happy people. More people have abandoned them. More people, they are down to their core. And if it shrinks any more than this, that means even their core people are abandoning them.
Right.
And so there's an old saying here in business and everything. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. And so it's easy to go, well, we're worth 5.2. Well, go look up the value of some of the major companies up there. Are you going to, what was Disney worth at one point versus what Disney's worth now?
Right.
Do you sell whatever? I mean, do you sell WWE or do you break out, or what do you do? At some point you got to look at it and go, okay, yeah, it's 5.2, but why can't it be 10?
Sure. And that's long-term forecasting. We're talking for the next couple of years, right?
Well, but you got to start. You can, again, like I said, the product's going to be different in 6 months just because Vince's not going to be tearing up scripts every night.
Right.
I mean, with that argument, we can go, well, Vince tearing up scripts every night's a good thing. Oh, sure, killed morale, killed people, and they want, and they wanted to go somewhere else and things like that. But
100%.
I don't. It can improve and it should improve. And again, I don't know if Kevin Dunn's lasting long or short. Rumors are that people are gunning for him, and so, and like I said, Vince is gone. He may not want to be there either.
Right.
So, but anyway, Jay, we're probably getting to the point we should wrap up.
Definitely we'll wrap up, but I do want to say this. To Tim's point, $5.7 billion, I think similarly, you could sit and wait and see what happens. Because if the whole law of return, right? If you start having those diminishing returns, what would it take for you to turn on Raw tonight? What would it take for you to, or on Monday? Who or what would make you watch it tonight? And with $5.7 billion, they could probably do that. Whatever it takes. They want you to tune in? Okay, we'll bring John Cena back for the night. They want you to tune in? Hell, they'll buy the NWA and bring in Trevor Murdoch to defend the 10 pounds of gold right there on Raw.
Well,
I mean, look, that's being facetious and oversimplifying things. But again, it's not Disney. It's not $97 billion, but $5 billion, they can do a lot if they want to. They don't have to.
You can, but you got to be what you have now. What you have now is going to change, and it's either going to go up or it's going to go down. And if you stay the same, you're going down because money loses value all the time.
Sure,
especially now with inflation. So you have to do something, and every company that's ever been comfortable that says, okay, we're going to ride the wave. Look, there was a time when they told you that, get into the diaper service industry because people are always going to have kids and they're always going to have diapers that need to be washed.
Yep.
I was just looking up. Guess who's worth more than 5 point whatever billion? Nick Khan.
You mean Tony Khan or Nick
No,
Khan?
Nick Khan, his father.
Nick Khan is
or,
WWE.
I'm sorry. Hold on. What's Tony Khan's father's name?
Looking it up right now.
If you hadn't have asked me, I would know.
Shahid. Shahid.
He's worth more. Why isn't he buying more and making his son's promotion bigger?
Well,
he's got all that money.
Right.
He could buy Bad Bunny. He could buy J Cal.
Honestly, because pro wrestling's not his business.
No, but he has the money.
Well, and that's how Vince beat Ted Turner. Because
Which we talked about earlier.
yeah, and I kind of forgot about it, but he beat Ted Turner because Ted Turner didn't own a wrestling business. Ted Turner owned a conglomerate that owned a wrestling business.
We're also talking about a company that is built on the wrestling business. We're not talking about J Cal taking $5 billion and seeing what he can do with it. We're talking about the WWE, who, even though it's a sports entertainment company, to what Tim said, what they're doing is working. It doesn't appeal to you and me, but what they're doing is working. And I would say I would keep doing that too until it stops working. And that's when I would start being more innovative. But I don't feel like there would be a huge need. Like, look, again, $5 billion for wrestling. For wrestling. We're not talking about Disneyland and theme parks. We're talking about a TV show and live events.
Yeah, but you can't be, no matter what, you can't be complacent. And not doing anything is being complacent. And there are tech companies out there that sat on their asses when things exploded because they thought they had cornered an industry. And they're all gone now because somebody came in and did it better. And somebody came in and did it faster. And
Look at Amazon right now. They've been sitting on their laurels.
I mean, it's not
Amazon.
If you don't start you got to start making changes.
Sure.
If Vince was there, Vince would be making changes.
Vince is there. What changes did Vince make? What has it changed from this year to last year? Vince is there. I mean, he's not there today. He's not there.
But I'm saying, but he made changes throughout time.
Sure.
Attitude Era was a change.
Because it was a necessity. It was time to change. You had to change. You had to evolve.
Well, but that's WWE is reaching a point where, and let me tell you something else. People are going to be expecting change.
Sure.
When somebody like Vince goes,
but
again, there are people who are loyal to Vince.
But I think the change you're talking about could be very, very slight, and people would be excited about it. You mentioned it yourself. First thing I do is change the way the production is. Okay, that's a very big change.
I'm not,
but it's also a very little change.
There's a difference between what I would do and what I think is going to happen.
Sure.
Yeah.
I end the brand splat.
Splat.
Right. Yeah.
Is that what it sounded made because it's hit the ground?
And let's be honest. Vince did that once, and to a large extent, it's already happened again. The brand split is nowhere near what it was. We've already unified 2 of the titles for now. We already got people crossing over back and forth. They don't even make excuses for it anymore. There's no quarterly invitations. There's no wild card rules or, whatever they used to say whenever they were doing it. The brand split is it's not gone, but it's not hardcore. I mean, we got Street Profits showing up on both shows. So, that's what I'm saying. Things change. Things changed under Vince. Things are going to change when Vince is gone. People are expecting change. So, again, it's not something that there's not going to be a big bang. They're not going to open up Raw and hand out new belts and, introduce all these new wrestlers or change everybody's name or whatever. But I promise you in a year, it'll be a different product.
I don't know if it'll be significant or not. Like put it this way, and I get everything you're saying. This is maybe the most spirited and interesting discussion we've had in a while here.
Well, let me ask you this question.
It's not even NWA related. One sec.
But who knows? If Kevin Dunn, and Bruce
choked on a piece of wood,
and it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Even without them being forced out, they could choose to leave on their own.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would you think then that, okay, and those are things you got to take into account. Kevin Dunn has been there forever. You damn well better have a backup ready to take his place.
Sure. This is a company that is was headed by a guy who ran the show, and that's a dangerous kind of company. But if WWE is the Coca-Cola of wrestling, right? The only thing Coke did in the last 30, 40 years that was different was New Coke, and nobody liked that.
What about cherry Coke? What about orange Coke? What about?
Those are small changes on top of the original product. Like the original product still exists, right?
Yeah. So does, believe it or not, so does Coke too. They still sell that in some countries.
Yeah, and I like the New Coke, but
that was about space.
I'm not arguing that's what should happen. I'm with you guys. I'm just arguing I think that's what will happen. I think that if there's a fear of complacency, there's probably a greater fear of change, at least in a major way. They want to go where the money is, and currently the money says do what you're doing.
How funny!
I don't agree that's what the money says, and I don't agree that anybody who comes in when the old guy leaves, their first thing is to try and stamp their name on it.
How funny is it that the most spirited conversation we've had in a long time on this podcast is anything to do with the NWA? Go figure.
That's what NWA sucks, and we all agree.
So, okay. Well, then
maybe when the NWA gets $7.8 billion, we'll care about them.
There it is.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, let's wrap it up now because I know it's getting late on the East Coast, and Jaden and Tim got to go to bed and help out at the rest home and whatever else they got to do, and we'll just call it a night. And thank you guys for checking it out. I don't think we'll do this too often, but every now and then it's kind of fun to just pop on this whole YouTube thing and talk wrestling with you guys. And thanks to everyone that was in the chat checking things out. I do appreciate you guys. But we'll see you next week. We got a full schedule: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Times are all available, same as always. We'll see you at the matches. Have a good night. Now. Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.